When do you know to ignore something or someone? Now that question, or it's really two in one, those aren't necessarily easy to answer all the time. And if they're too easy to answer, we probably have some other questions we need to ask ourselves. So when we're thinking about that, how do we determine when it is time to ignore something or to ignore someone? Now, the first part of that question, maybe that part is slightly easier than the second part to answer, because we need to ignore situations. Like, we need to go, wait a minute, you know what? That doesn't get my energy, my time. We need to let go of things. Letting go is part of forgiveness. And so there are opportunities for us to determine when do we need to ignore something, when it is disrupting our peace, when it is like our response will do absolutely no good. It's not going to help the situation. It's not going to bring about good things. In fact, maybe it'll make it even messier. So an opportunity for that. But when we're thinking about how do we ignore someone, that gets a little bit more tedious, because we get that whole thing with Jesus going, you know what, you need to love your neighbors as yourselves. And so it's a moment of going, all right, how do I know when to ignore someone or when not to? And so for that, we've got a teaching of Jesus found in Luke, the 10th chapter, verses 5-6. It says, whenever you enter a house, first say, may peace be on this house. If anyone there shares God's peace, then your peace will rest on that person. If not, your blessing will return to you. So Albert Einstein says, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. We must have an understanding that not everyone will accept our peace, accept our blessing, and maybe they'll even outright reject it to us. And so when that happens, it's one of those things of we sometimes want to react to that. We want to respond in an unhelpful way. But here, Jesus is like, you know what? It'll just come back to you. Just let it go. That blessing, that peace that we always show up, because the only person we can control is ourselves. And so that we show up to things, to people, to moments, and we are bringing peace. We are bringing a blessing, and that's all that we can do. And there are times where people will reject it or just not accept it. They'll ignore it. And so when that happens, how do we deal with that? And Jesus gives us one more step in this. It goes to the Gospel of Matthew 10:14. It says, if anyone refuses to welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust of your feet as you leave that house or city. All right, so here is, you know what? We show up with welcoming, with blessing, with peace, and there are going to be times when people don't accept it. And so we shake the dust off, letting go again, shake the dust and go on our way, that we move on, that we take our peace and our blessing somewhere else, that we're not going to beat our heads against the wall and we're going to force people, because we cannot force peace, right? As Albert Einstein had said, right? I mean, when he goes, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. And so here we have to recognize that peace and blessings are a two-way street. And that when we come to a situation where we are not on the receiving end because ours that we showed up with has been rejected or just not accepted, that I feel like one of those is a little more severe than the other, that we just go on our way. But here's something important for us to keep in mind. When we go on our way, that we have to leave the possibility open that at some point that one who has rejected, not accepted our peace and our blessing may decide, you know what, that wasn't the right course of action. And they want to bring peace and blessing to our lives. And so at that point, then we shift what it means to be in relationship with, that we begin to cultivate, we begin to build on that. So just a few ways to think about when do we ignore something and when do we ignore someone, but also leaving the possibility that at some point the circumstance may change. And if it doesn't, it does not make us go a different path. It does not stop us from bringing peace and blessings to everyone we meet. Hopefully this provides a little bit of challenge, but also just thinking through, all right, what is it? How have I drawn the criteria? How have I decided when I will ignore a situation or someone else? Have a good one.